Okay, good afternoon. My name is Vincent, Senior Safety Advisor with Environmental Health and Safety. I want to thank Yvonne, Adam, Matt, and the team for inviting us to present this review of the laboratory safety awareness. Okay, so today we will be going over roles and responsibilities, hazard identification, laboratory containers, compressed gas cylinders, and common facilities lab tests. Okay, as an overview and objective for today, I hope that all of you will leave here at the end of this talk with familiarity of the following and understanding of how to identify hazardous materials precautions to take when working in laboratories and how to report incidents. Okay, so roles and responsibilities. The university has responsibilities and obligations as your employer. So the university and supervisor identify the hazards, provide PPE, provide info, provide training, and include test-specific training. So you must ensure your own safety, report hazards, use the PPE, follow procedures, get trained, promote a safe, healthy, and environmentally sound workplace. Okay, so roles and responsibilities of environmental health and safety. We can act as consultants for technical guidance, institutional health and safety program development, laboratory inspections and surveys, conduct research safely in compliance with regulations. Services provided, general safety training, hazardous waste disposal, emergency response, hazard assessments, laboratory commissioning and decommissioning, and laboratory equipment clearances. Okay, so moving on to our next topic, hazard identification. The primary mode of hazard ID is signs and labels, door signs and chemical labels, areas and equipment and other warning signs. We will go into each of these in more depth. Okay, so hazard identification door signs. Door signs are meant to communicate the potential hazards inside a laboratory to workers and emergency responders. It is typically safe to enter a laboratory, but if you're not confident entering a laboratory, knock and ask the workers if it is safe to come inside. You'll see that emergency contact information is on most laboratories in the form of the sign that you see in the slide, and also the possible laboratory hazards. Okay, so hazard ID. We will go into each of these in depth. So biohazard, excuse me, biological substances that pose a threat to human health and may be used inside the laboratory. Radiation, ionizing radiation is present in a controlled manner. Lasers, intense beams of light capable of causing skin, eye, or property damage. Magnetic fields, magnets used for research purposes can interfere with medical implants or grab magnetic tools. Explosives, chemicals that may detonate if handled by someone without special training and are used inside the laboratory as well. Flammables. These are materials, particularly liquids, that can burn very easily. High voltage. Coming into contact with a high voltage source could lead to electrical shock or electrocution. Chemicals that are toxic to humans and cause poisoning if inhaled, ingested, or by skin contact are example of the toxic logo that you see in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, so we'll go more in depth to some of these. Biological indicates the presence of potentially infectious material or regulated medical waste. So is anybody familiar with this piece of equipment pictured on the left? It's called a biological safety cabinet. It's meant to protect the user and the environment. It's similar to a fume hood without the air ducts that are attached. Okay, so typically these devices will bear the universal biohazardous sign. Reflects that this laboratory may be working with potentially infectious materials. Okay, so radioactive material. These are your low energy emitters in small amounts used in well-marked locations. What's important with radioactive materials is distance equals safety. Radioactive materials emit invisible particles through the air that can impact the body and potentially do damage. However, when used and stored correctly, the hazard is minimal. In fact, EH&S inspects all laboratories using radioactive materials at least 4 times per year to ensure it's being done safely. Like with other hazards, keeping your distance, a few feet typically, is more than enough to keep you safe from any air and radiation. Laser safety. So there are different laser signs which you may see on a lab door. Caution should be used when entering a space with the laser sign. So lasers are beams of light. They can be simple and low power like a laser pointer or complex and high power like some of the research equipment you'll see at Columbia. They may be visible or you may not be able to see them at all. Most are contained within equipment that turns the laser off if the device is open. Some are open beam and should always be approached with caution. When in doubt, ask a supervisor or environmental health and safety. Okay, so strong magnetic fields. Do not bring magnetic options. Sorry, do not bring magnetic objects into rooms with magnetic warning signs. So strong magnetic fields can erase data from credit cards, move around magnetic objects like some tools, or disrupt the function of a medical implant. Always verify with laboratory personnel that it's safe to enter before doing so. Okay, so first question. So what are 3 sources of information on potential hazards in laboratories? The answer is door signs, your supervisor, and environmental health and safety. Okay, so next on our agenda is laboratory containers. First container we will discuss are red bags. So red bags may contain biological hazard substances, and the best defense is to simply avoid touching them. EH&S employs a separate vendor to pick up and replace these containers. Facilities personnel should not service these containers. Okay, sharps. So sharps containers may contain biological hazardous substances, and the best defense is to simply avoid touching them. EH&S employs a separate vendor to pick up and replace these containers. Facilities personnel should not service these containers. Okay, so hazardous waste, chemical or regulated waste should only be removed or removed by trained staff. This is actually required by regulation. You need to be trained to remove hazardous waste and radioactive waste. The orange label indicates a hazardous chemical waste container, and the white label with the radiation logo indicates a radiation waste. Okay, so glassware containers. These cardboard boxes are used for recycling clean glass used in the laboratory. Facilities does pick up these boxes, but only if they are packed and labeled correctly. The box should be in good condition, with the top securely fastened with duct or packing tape. The label on the slide should be filled out by the laboratory and stuck on the box before pickup. If the box is in the hallway and does not follow those packing rules, notify your supervisor, who can notify EH&S. Okay, so last but not least, we'll go into compressed gases and some of the common facilities lab tests. Okay, so compressed gas cylinders are under high pressure. The gases themselves may be hazardous, but the more likely scenario of injury with compressed gases is related to their weight. If they become damaged, they can become a missile and fly through the lab doing lots of damage. It is important to avoid coming into contact with these cylinders, especially when working with bulky cleaning equipment. Okay, so some of the common facilities, tests, and labs. So some routine maintenance is done in laboratories. This training is meant to provide you with a basic awareness of the hazards that might be in the work area. If you think one of the hazards we covered today will interfere with your work, you should notify your supervisor, who will request that EH&S perform a laboratory clearance. Laboratory clearance is the process by which EH&S and the laboratory work together to ensure that a space is suitable for work and reoccupancy or relocation. So some of the tests, as you see pictured, are some plumbing work, overhead shower testing, relamping, HVAC issues, fume hood maintenance. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, EH&S will assess the situation for laboratory clearance and determine if the lab needs to take any action to make the work area safe for you. For instance, if you need to work on a cup sink or an electrical outlet inside the fume hood, you should request a clearance from EH&S to make sure any hazardous chemicals are moved out of the way first. The clearance is not meant to be done anytime work in the laboratory is done, only when a real hazard to the work area is perceived to exist. But as always, when in doubt, just ask. Okay, so some examples of some items that EH&S clears are the previously mentioned biological safety cabinets, freezers and fridges, centrifuges, hot plates. Okay, so identify what is wrong with this picture. You'll see on the left that there is actually a biological red bin in the regular garbage. So obviously that is not allowed. And on the right, you'll see a needle in the regular garbage. So what would we do if we saw either of these? Either contact your supervisor or contact the EH&S. Most importantly, do not try and handle this yourself, especially the sharps container, because you could be at risk of getting punctured by the syringe. Okay, so who's responsible for removing containers with this label? Was it facilities? No, it's not facilities. The answer is trained staff. So it could be environmental health and safety, the laboratory themselves. You must be aware of the hazards and the regulations to be able to remove these. So facilities is not responsible for that. Okay, so who to call? For emergency issues, you can call public safety. For non-emergency issues, to report to EH&S, you can call our main line. And for non-emergency issues, speak to a supervisor or facilities compliance team for general questions. I'll give you a minute to jot down the numbers, but I just want to say if you're ever unsure, it never hurts to call, especially us. I have no problem just coming down and checking something out. And yeah, so we'll move on. Okay, so summary. So be aware of the signs around you. Caution should be used around laboratory research chemicals or equipment. Obtaining clearance form before performing any non-routine tasks. No eating or drinking in a lab. Report any unsafe condition to your supervisor or laboratory workers. And for example, this includes odors or spills. The odors are very common at the medical center. So when in doubt, just ask. It never hurts to call. Yeah. All right. And any questions, you can forward to lab safety. Some of you may have my contact information as well. My name is Vincent. Yeah, we'll be glad to answer any questions you have regarding hazards in the work.